Hello, my name is Michelle, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. Joining us on the podcast today is Julianne Taylor. Julianne is the founder and creative director of Taylor Burke Home. She is also a published author, collaborator, public speaker, and business consultant to creatives. Her newest venture, Julianne Taylor Style, allows her to be creative and to work with other companies to put her look on all types of products, from wallpaper to pajamas to tabletop items and more. Julianne and I met last year when I hosted a retreat in Charleston, South Carolina. We had a great time talking, and Julianne was so kind to invite the design group I was hosting to her home for dinner and more conversation. And today, Julianne is sharing her story about building her brand, a bit about licensing product, and really using her creativity to express herself and make a living. Enjoy. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hey, Julianne, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. I met you at High Point Market last year, back in 2018. And
that's right.
Yeah, and you were just so gracious and so kind. And then we had a wonderful opportunity through one of the events that I hold to come to your home back in December-ish time frame?
Yeah, it was right before the holidays.
And then we had the wonderful opportunity of having you come in and speak to my group about branding and, really knowing who we are. And so now I'm excited to take your brilliance and help share it out with everybody who's listening. So I'm excited to chat today.
Well, I don't know about brilliance, but I will give you what I got.
I love it. And I'm sure that it will be brilliant. Julianne, tell us a little bit about your business and what you're doing.
So right now, I sort of have two arms to what I do. I'm a product developer at heart, and I'm an interior designer by trade. And so I have two companies. One is Taylor Burke Home, and it's a custom upholstery company that mainly sells to the trade around the U.S. We show our products in High Point, North Carolina, as well as Atlanta at America's Mart. And our office is based in Charleston, South Carolina, which is where I live. And it's all of the products are made in North Carolina. So our main target customer, these are interior designers around the country that want to partner with a boutique custom upholstery company that sort of gets the importance of details and the need for customization. And then the other company that I started after Taylor Burke Home is called Julianne Taylor Style, and it really is it's sort of an umbrella company for a series of licensed collections of products. So because I do product development for Taylor Burke Home, I also have gotten the pleasure of doing product development with some other companies. So I've launched products like wallpaper and artwork and tabletop. We even launched pajamas this year, which was really fun. I also do a lot of, similar to what you do in terms of coaching and working with interior designers, I do that as well. But my sort of target client for that is a product developer. So I work with creatives around business strategy, scaling their business, growing their businesses, but mostly, these clients are people that are entrepreneurs that sell some sort of product. And that's kind of my niche for that in terms of creative coaching. And then any kind of speaking engagements, anything like that, styling. I'm starting to get involved in working with local stores here in Charleston and creating fun events in their stores and inviting my friends that, are influencers as well, and doing a fun event in their store and having a photographer shoot it. So creating content for some local as well as national brands, and all of that sort of is housed under the JT Style brand. So it gives me a lot of variety to do lots of different things. So it sounds like crazy and it sounds like a lot, but in reality, they all, there's so much crossover between the two companies that it really does give me a nice variety to flex my creative muscles.
Well, it doesn't sound like you're going to get bored anytime soon. That's for sure.
Definitely not. And I think that's what sort of sparked JT Style a few years ago, is just to have another outlet to explore my creative side. And I love the work that we do through Taylor Burke Home. But at the end of the day, we do launch new products every year, but you can only get so excited about a sofa. You know what I'm saying? Like it's fun and exciting, and I love working with designers and I love our customers, but there's this whole creative part of my brain that needs to be expressed in lots of different ways. And so I think that's the beauty of also having JT Style is, it's sort of a holding company for everything else that I want to do personally.
So let's start for just a minute and talk about Taylor Burke Home and the inception of that. When you started that business, tell us a little bit about where you were and what had just happened. Like, I know this from being at your home and having the conversation, but I want everybody else to know too, that this was based out of traveling and seeing a need. And tell us a little bit about how that got started.
Yeah, so my husband and I lived overseas for 10 years after we got married, to follow his career with General Motors. And we moved around from Melbourne, Australia to Barcelona, Shanghai, and then Seoul, South Korea before moving back to the US. And so we were overseas for a long time. And while I was the trailing spouse, I sort of had to carve out something for me to do. I certainly admire stay-at-home moms, but I am, I'm just not cut out to do that. I've always known that I wanted to have children, but I also knew that I had this entrepreneurial spirit and that I was a creative, and I would probably not be fulfilled being a stay-at-home mom. Again, I certainly admire those types of individuals, but it's just not for me. And so I think all of this time while we were overseas, I was busy having children and traveling and doing lots of interesting and exciting things. I sort of found my way into doing interior design work for other people that had assignments overseas as well. So these were all Westerners, typically Americans, that were living in these countries on what's called an expatriate assignment. And, typically, and also thinking about the environment, way back in 2008, 9, 10, during that time, the bubble was bursting here in the US, but overseas, that's where all the growth was. And so we were sort of protected from that, in a sense that, I was dealing with people that, in many cases, the wife was the trailing spouse and the husband was a very high level executive in these big corporate jobs. So they had a little bit of extra disposable income, and they were in rental housing for a few years with white walls, but they were hosting all these events at their home, like book club or dinner with the ambassador or whatever. And they're like, my home needs to look good. I want my home to feel good and cozy for my family while we're here for the next couple of years. And I found that there was sort of a captive audience for my skill set. And so I would just meet one person, and by word of mouth, I would end up doing interior design work for these expats. And it was going in and looking at their home that was rented for a couple of years and going shopping with them and working with local workrooms to get custom furniture made and going to the fabric market to buy the fabric. And so it allowed me to really gain a lot of skills as an interior designer working overseas. And because I started doing a lot of custom furniture, I remember at the time, this was sort of 2010, 2011, 12, where I was like, I think I have sort of an interesting perspective on this, because I'm doing all this custom furniture work and I really like it. I like the interior design part of it, but I also like going to the factory and sketching a design for a custom sectional and watching it be made. And so as I started thinking about sort of what my next move was going to be, that was really the catalyst for Taylor Burke Home. And the company started while we were living in Seoul, Korea. And I named the company after my sister and me. And I think, Michelle, you remember me talking to you about this, that, I could have easily named it Julianne Taylor Home. But at the time, I just felt like I knew enough to know that I wanted to build a brand and a company that would stand on its own. Whether I knew that I would be the face of the company, but I wanted the company to have its own legs. And so I named the company after my sister and me, and she's Lauren Burke in Charlotte, and she's not part of the company, but she certainly is one of the driving forces behind the start of the company. Her support has always been there, and it's just to honor our close relationship. And the name just sort of has that, it just has sort of a strong sound to it.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think it's because it's two last names.
yeah.
I think when you put last names together, it has a very strong, our two sons, all three of their names are last names. And it sounds very strong when you hear it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the actual launch of Taylor Burke Home, I loaded up a container of goods that were made overseas and shipped them to Atlanta and did my first show at America's Mart, and flew back to Seoul after the show. And I looked at my husband and I was like, I think we're on to something. I met so many wonderful companies and connections at that market, and we just got so much business dumped on us in that first market. And I was like, oh no, now what I do? It was that sort of that feeling of,
right.
Okay, now I've got
the that worked.
Now what do I do? So we were in the process from a personal standpoint as well, that we'd been overseas almost 10 years. And we were like, it's time for us to move back. And so we ended up moving back. And as soon as we hit the ground in the US, I started searching for manufacturers that could make our product. And that really is the process for that. Because I've had a lot of questions from people over the years that are like, how do you find these places? How do you find manufacturers? And I'm like, it is straight up guerrilla warfare. Like, you just don't take no for an answer. You make a connection. You ask them if they know somebody. They connect you to somebody else. Oh, you don't do that? Well, do you know somebody that does? Oh, you don't do that? It literally was.
You got to keep pushing.
You just have to keep pushing, and to not be afraid to find that answer, or for the phone to be hung up on you, or for somebody just to be like, no. But I didn't let that stop me. And, we've been through some manufacturers, and that's okay. But, we have different people in the Southeast that make different pieces and parts for us. And, they're in it with us. We don't own our own factory. That's not part of our business model. We keep our overhead very low. Everything's made to order. What we're selling to people is our ability to customize and our customer service. Like, that is what we're selling. We don't have a warehouse full of product and inventory to ship out tomorrow. That's just not part of our business model. But all of these manufacturing partners, they make product for other companies that people are very familiar with, but it's, that sort of is if you are a boutique company like we are, and lots of other people are, and you have that sort of spirit of being an entrepreneur, you got to kind of be scrappy, and you have different people making pieces and parts, and that's what makes it work for us.
Right.
and the other part is when one part is not working, or for whatever reason, quality suffers on one part of the equation, we then go in and find somebody else that can do that part. So it doesn't bring down the whole house,
Right.
by having all of your eggs in one basket.
Now, when you started, Julianne, did you start with profitability in mind, or did you start with, it sounds like you were more looking for that creative outlet, and then almost shocked that you thought it would work? I'm talking about, especially with the first market that you just described.
The first market really was sort of testing and trying, getting
Right.
a proof of concept, really.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I had no idea if people were going to respond to my products or the company, just didn't know. And I'd been overseas for so long, it was kind of luck in a sense that I didn't even really have my pulse on what was going on in the US. So, now where I sit, I would never advise somebody to do that. But I think that's part of the reason I just went full force into it, because I was like, I had at the time, my husband was, and he still is, incredibly supportive. And we had to take our own personal finances as the seed money to launch this company. And, fortunately for us, we were in a position that we were able to do that. And I remember him looking at me, because I just had this enormous amount of guilt, because I was like, what if nobody likes it? What if it doesn't work? We're going to spend all this money to ship all this product. And, it's really expensive to get a booth at America's Mart. And what if people hate it? What if I don't sell anything? All those,
right.
those discussions you have. And I will never forget, he looked at me and he said, when we get to the nursing home someday down the road, he was like, I would so much rather you try and lose it all than to never try at all. And
what a gift.
It was such a gift. And he was like, I am so proud of you. And he's like, I understand that this seed money, we could do a whole lot of other things with it. And he said, but, what's the risk? He's like, the risk of never following your dreams. He's like, you'll never know what could be.
Right.
And so, that really was an incredible gift that he gave me in terms of the support. And I don't know that I would have done it had he not been supportive. And I tell people now, I'm like, when I coach creatives, I'm like, tell me about your partner,
yes.
Whether it's somebody that they're married to or not. I'm like, the important person in your life, your significant other, are they supportive? Because if they're not, you got a real challenge on your hands, especially when you start talking about using personal finances for your business.
Right.
So I think, he has been one of my biggest cheerleaders from the very beginning. And, and it is true. Like, there are things that I have tried that, I'm like, yeah, that didn't work too well. I'm not going to do that again. But it is one of those things that, like, well, what's the point of it all? You get to be 70 or 80 years old and look back and go, well, I wonder what would have happened if I had just tried. What's the point? So
right.
my whole mantra is, be smart about it. Be strategic about it, do your research, but in the end, you're never going to have 100% confirmation. At some point, you got to step off the cliff.
Right.
Because otherwise you'll talk yourself out of it.
Mm-hmm. I've always said, if you can talk yourself out of it, or if one person can go, oh, that's not a great idea, and you change your mind, you probably weren't invested in the idea as much as you should have been anyway. But, and in your case too, in some ways you had already done at least a local proof of concept because of the homes of the expats that you had been working in. So you already had some people around you who were willing to pay for work with, the items. And so that probably gave you a small boost as well to give it a shot. But it's still very different when you're overseas than when you're going to load up a container and go to your first market ever and ship everything over back to the United States.
Yeah. And, this is sort of a side note to that, but just to even tell people, Like, don't let any stumbling blocks get in your way. I mean, that first shipment, there's a lot of cultural differences about operating in Asia. And, there is a culture, sometimes you run up against integrity issues. And especially with customs agents over there, we knew just from our experience of living in Shanghai and Seoul, people want to be paid off at the customs office. And at the time, the freight forwarder that I used actually hijacked my container and tried to get me to pay them $10,000 to get it released. Now, in the meantime, I had already paid my booth fee to America's Mart. Like, I had already ordered business cards. Like, the ball was rolling for me to show in Atlanta. And so
with your hijacked goods.
Yeah. And so I'm like, I mean, those goods have got to get to Atlanta. I was like, I mean, they got to get there. So again, I mean, I was like Scooby-Doo over here I was calling our ambassador in Korea. Like, I was calling anybody that I knew that might know somebody. And I ended up hiring a Chinese attorney that helped me get my shipment released. And it was all a fraud. The shipment was actually on the water the whole time. The freight forwarder was just trying to see if he could squeeze a nice 10 G's out of me.
Wow. It sounds like some of these email scams we get these days, right?
Yes. And it's just one of those things where it absolutely could have like crippled me before the company even started. But it is one of those things, I think, for entrepreneurs, we don't take no, and we don't fall down easily. My husband calls me a weeble wobble. And those of you that grew up in the 70s, you know what a weeble wobble is.
Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down.
That's right. And I mean, he says, he's like, you get knocked over, but you get back up. And it doesn't mean that I always have the answers or I know what to do in every scenario. I've been knocked down quite a few times, but what it means is that I don't stay there forever. Like,
right.
You gotta pull yourself back up and dust yourself off and be like, okay, this guy's got my container hijacked and he wants 10 grand. Well, what am I going to do about that? So, I do think that is the true spirit of being an entrepreneur, is that you're persistent and you don't take no for an answer. You just keep going and going and going until you get what you want. And I think that's been a thread through our entire journey of both of these companies.
So when did you realize that, okay, wait a minute, this is really going to be profitable? Not like we've just proved the concept, but after you came back to the States, when did you really realize, you've got this operation now set up in the US? When did you realize that this is really going to be profitable in the way that you wanted it to?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's still a moving target for us. And, every year we're evaluating things to be more profitable.
Sure.
I think, the first 3 years I worked for free, like a startup, you work 24/7. And I mean, there was every dollar went back into the company. So, that's when I'd call my sister, Lauren, and be like, hey, can you come help me at the show? And she'd come and work for free, just to help me. Or, I would get interns that would be willing to work for free or for, an hourly rate that was, just above minimum wage, and, to get the experience. And you just kind of
bootstrap it.
Yeah, you really do. And in the meantime, you got 3 small children. So you're kind of running carpool, then you're trying to run a business from your home office. I had a home office at the time, and I worked from, we've all started where we were at the dining room table and, all of our converted guest room. That's where everybody starts. And, I've got a child in the floor doing, coloring with crayons, and I'm emailing customers. So, I mean, the first 3 years, there was no money for me. And then we really just started growing and taking off, and we started making money. And, we've kind of come full circle in that Taylor Burke Home really did start to stand on its own legs. And we sort of created this perception about our brand that we're this big company. Our social media took off. We started doing a lot of partnerships with influencers, and we got involved in some things where people just thought we were this huge company. And there was a certain aspect of that that was good because we had some legitimacy there in the marketplace. And so we ramped up, we hired all these people, I think it just kind of grew beyond what I thought it could be, but also beyond what I really wanted it to be. I never wanted us to lose sight of the fact that we are a small boutique upholstery company. And I always tell customers, when you call, we don't want you to feel like customer number 6257. If someone calls and they want to get to me, they can. And I still do on occasion, I'll answer the phone just because, and like people are like, oh my gosh, I'm so, and I'm like, I want to know what our customers are up to, like, how's your business? And a lot of them I meet at market, I work every market. I'm in every showroom that we do. So I meet them personally and I develop relationships with them. Now, I may not be the person that processes your order and takes your credit card and all that stuff, but if you want to talk to me, you can. And I don't ever want to lose sight of that. And so in the last couple of years, we have now come full circle in a sense that we're actually scaling down that business to where we're trimming out overhead. We spend a lot of time early on, energy and manpower on building systems to put systems in place,
Right.
so that lots of our processes are automated, so that I don't physically have to have a full-time person that just manages setting up new trade accounts. I mean, we used to have somebody that did a lot of that, and now you can go on our website and set up a trade account. So you fill out the information yourself, attach your resale license, and you get set up that way. And it's all automated. I don't have to pay someone to sit in our office to manage that anymore. And so
and to do that basic data entry.
Yeah, so a lot of things that we do have become more automated. And I've also learned that I do have a background in HR as well, and that definitely comes into play, managing teams and managing employees. But it's not the highest, best use of my time. And that's one of the things I talk about a lot with the entrepreneurs in our creative coaching is like, let's think about the time that you spend on doing this specific task. And is that the highest, best use of your time? And, the highest, best use of my time is not dealing with doing staff meetings and coaching employees and all that stuff. I mean, it's important, but one of the core strengths of our company is part of our intellectual property, and that's our product development. And that all comes from me. So the highest, best use of my time is working on having a phone call with someone about a partnership that we might do, or researching for inspiration for product development, or designing our High Point showroom. That is the highest, best use of my time. And so one of the things that we've started doing is, as people have left or just with attrition, we've had interns and other things, they go back to college or people have moved on. We haven't replaced them. And we are now outsourcing as much as we possibly can. We 1099 people, so they work for us. They also work for other companies, but it's project basis. Like, I need you to do our email blasts, or this catalog for this year. I'm not going to pay somebody full time to be on staff to do that. I'm going to outsource that to somebody.
Right.
So it's like, I'm going to pay you for a product that you're doing, or a service, and I just need you to do the project. I don't need to worry about, your cousin is sick and you need to be out for 2 days, and how much paid time off do you have left, and all that stuff. Like, that's time away from what I need to be focused on. And so we are definitely in a season of scaling down. And what it has allowed me to do is to be more profitable. And it's allowed me to have more time to focus on things that I need to do with Julianne Taylor Style. So I can do both.
Right.
And, so I tell people all the time, I'm like, spend the money up front to invest in any process that you can automate that will replace a human being at some point. So
and that's not it. That's not, let's be honest here too. In most cases, not that we weren't being honest before. I don't mean to insinuate that.
No, I like
but I'm just saying, let's be
Michelle.
transparent. It's probably the better choice of words. Even coming up with processes and automating is expensive because, it is an investment. Now, the cool thing is once you've invested, like you said, it pays off in spades in most cases if it's done well, right? But there is a time investment, there is a technology investment, and, based on having to outsource. And I say that coming from a place of, I have online courses and online membership sites, and it is a lot of work to manage, to keep up. But it also stops me from having to have that whole one person to sit down and do things. And even if sometimes the cost is the same, like I would pay somebody similar to what I pay for all the automation, I don't have to manage the human resource part. So it actually is cheaper for me.
Yeah.
Point, right?
It really is. And the other piece that, I didn't really think through when I first started is that it's not just the annual salary, right? It's all the taxes on top of that, and the insurance and the workers' comp. And then you've got,
and the days off and the sick time, and even just the managing of attitude or, and
then you got Paychecks, who was our payroll company that I pay twice a month to run the payroll. Like, I mean, it just all these added costs that, I could take that money and slice it and dice it and get somebody that does projects for me and is a freelancer and also does projects for other companies. And I can still get that work done for a whole lot less. And the other thing that I talk about a lot in my creative coaching sessions is around, we are up against some generational things too, because, now, I mean, millennials, I love ya, but, the working environment for people that are coming out of college right now, there are a lot of people, there is a freelancer spirit about that generation. There's a lot of, I want to work from a coffee shop. I want to work from home. I need flexibility.
I want to work at night or in the middle of the night.
Yeah. And I'm not knocking it. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's very different than the culture of my company.
Yes.
That doesn't work for me for you to go work at a coffee shop and I have no idea what you're working on today. Like, that's just not the nature of our job if you're going to be on my payroll full time.
Right.
So
if you're on my subcontract list, you can do whatever you want to do.
Yeah. I'm like, you can go work wherever you want to. But, I started running up, first day they'd come on board and it would be, I'd run into, I've got 17 weddings this summer that I'm in. So I'm going to need all this time off.
Yeah.
Again, millennials, not knocking you, but there are people out there that are like, yep, girl, preach it, girl. Because that is, their flexibility is something that generationally is very important to that group. And I'm not knocking it, but I have to also run my business in a way that's appropriate. And, I grew up in a time where I did internships for free when I was in college. Now it's really hard to find somebody that wants to do an internship just to learn new skills. And I also, I was hired. I didn't even know what the vacation policy was. I was just so thankful to have a job. And that seems to be such a point of concern for people that I've had to hire over the last few years. And it for me, my point is that to be able to have a business model for us in staffing where we are now focused more on project types of things where we can outsource it, that allows me to be more profitable.
Right. And it allows whoever you're working with to work on their own terms. I know that, And hiring and staffing up, staffing down, and streamlining, every bit of that affects our profitability, no doubt about it. A poor process executed poorly is not going to help us. And I love that you are now, not now, but you have grown to the point that the focus is on the project, outsourcing when necessary, having the employees, but very key employees, so that the ones that are there are very key and their jobs are, solid. They know what they're doing. They're not out hanging out at a coffee shop, right? And so that allows you then the flexibility to move off and look at other things too, knowing that Taylor Burke Home is taken care of.
Yeah, we're in a good space right now. And, it's also, we're in a position where I'm like, people that come and work with us, and they're like, well, what's my, let's discuss my job responsibilities. And I'm like, these are your job responsibilities. D, all of the above.
Right. And anything else added to the list.
It really is. I'm like, D, it's everything. Like, and for me too, like, I was out listen, this morning, I went to my Bible study this morning. And before I did that, we have somebody in Hoboken, New Jersey that has ordered a sample light that's been in our warehouse. Well, guess who was packing that this morning for the delivery people to pick up? Yours truly. I was packing the light this morning because that's what needed to happen at 6:30 this morning so they could pick it up. So it really is like, you look on social media and people think, you create a perception. And I do think for Taylor Burke Home, that's been a key learning for us, is that, I think the perception of us grew so big that people were like, well,
they had big expectations. They had big company expectations.
They did. And also, I think we lost sight of who our core customer is. And that is the independent interior designer that most likely works from home or works from a small studio. They were like, oh no, they would never work with me. Like they're going to have some huge minimum. They're not going to let me order from them. And I'm like, no, that you are our target customer. And so we were able to take that feedback and change, our branding and how we're perceived in the marketplace and what we do, so that people are not scared to open an account with us.
Right.
We're friendly. We won't bite your head off. We're not one of the big boys that's like going to make you jump through hoops to order.
Or you can't come into my showroom because you don't have, yeah. Sorry,
so
you can't.
It really has been sort of a full circle. We started small, we grew really big, and now we're scaling back down. It's, kind of two things. One, we're more profitable, but also we're a company that's attainable and reachable by our core customers.
And you're choosing to stay that way.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We're never going to be one of the big boys, and nor do we want to be.
Right.
I don't want a sales rep out there selling my product. Sales reps, I love you. For lots of companies, that's very appropriate. For ours, we've crashed and burned every time because it's such a customizable product. Designers need to have conversation about it, and they want to call us to do that. So,
which is exactly why we need a boutique upholstery offering to be able to do that. That's the same way I feel about custom drapery workrooms and custom upholstery in any way. It's not a off-the-shelf offering. It is custom. It is, I want to trim here. I want to change this nail head here. I want, this kind of a kick skirt, whatever it is. And that's what makes it boutique. That's what makes it valuable. And that's where you get to have the control that you don't get to have when you're just kind of ordering with 3 pre-selected fabrics or, furniture styles or whatever.
I agree.
So let me ask you this, Julianne. One of the things that I've noticed from watching you and from conversations, and then even just from some of the things you've said already in our time together, but you are a people person and you are a connector. So tell me about that. Have you always been a connector? I see you. I would love to see your strengths finder. I want to see your top 5. That would jazz me to see that. We'll have to get that set up for you. I would just because we all tend to kind of fall back into our top 5. I've got a podcast that I just did with Darren Virasamy from 34 Strong. And we talk about your top 5 strengths. And that's what mine are: maximizer, achiever, relator, strategic, and self-assurance. And so, the people that know me and watch me, if they know my top 5 strengths, they can see me acting on that. Even today, I was speaking at a local WCAA event this morning. And one of the people sitting there, I made the comment about, you spend so much money on education. I said, I bet learner is in your top strengths. And she's like, oh my gosh, it's my number 2. And I'm like, well, I can tell by the way you're acting, what you're doing. But I bet connector, connectedness has got to be part of your top, because part of your product development, yes, I understand there's a creative aspect for you, but you connect other people, even if you're not part of it. You know how you said, you would call a manufacturer and they might say, no, I don't do that. Well, tell me who does. But I bet you, from knowing you, that if somebody said, hey, I need a manufacturer that does this, you'd be like, hey, well, I'm not using them, but I met this guy and he does blah, blah, blah. Have you always seen that? Have you always been like that, or did you just develop that?
No, I think I have a need to, I always want to help others, and I see the value in, if I know the answer or I can make it easy for somebody, like, why not? Why not make it easy for them? And sometimes I'm part of that equation, but a lot of times I'm not, and that's okay. Like, I don't need to get something out of all of those connections that I make for someone. I think that really lines up with my own personal core values as a good citizen on this planet. I think that, especially as women, we have to encourage and support each other and build each other up, even when there's no skin in the game for us. And, Michelle, I know you got a copy of my book, Design Her. And that's what the whole book is about, is building up other women and supporting each other. I'm just a firm believer that there is more than enough business out there for everybody to make a dollar. And, the sort of offshoot of a lot of those connections is that it does come back to benefit me in many cases, because people know that I am a safe resource for them, or they will say, 2 years ago, you were very kind to me and connected me with this person, and now we're doing all this business together, and you didn't have to do that. And so now I have an opportunity that I think is, perfect for you. And so it really does come back tenfold, but that's not why I do it. I mean, even if there's nothing in it for me ever, I think I'm just that type of individual. I think that we all should be that way as humans on this planet. So whether I was doing this for a living or working at a dry cleaning service, or I was a teacher or whatever, I think that we all should do that.
Yeah,
So,
it's definitely in your strengths then. If you can, you can see it even outside of your business, then it's definitely a core value, and certainly something that you're strong at doing. You've worked that connector muscle.
it is. And I just think that, everybody's got a story. I mean, everybody's got baggage. Everybody's got a story. We're all human beings that, we all struggle with, whether it be something that happened in our childhood, or self-confidence, or, an ill parent, or a special needs child, or whatever it is. Everybody's got their baggage that they carry around, and, but also try to be productive citizens in the world. And why not make that easier for somebody?
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. Why not? I know Susan Woodcock and I just did a podcast that will come out prior to this one. And one of the conversations that we had in that podcast was, we need to celebrate when others celebrate and mourn when they mourn, not get that twisted up. And, be all sad when they're happy. No, we need to celebrate with each other. We need to be kind. We need to help each other out. And so I think that is important.
The other thing too is that anybody that sort of comes into my bubble or interacts with me in some sort of way, they know that I'm a Christian. I love Jesus, and I just approach those sort of things in a sense of, what would Jesus do?
Yeah. As a fellow believer, one of the things that's so interesting we talk about, I teach a women's Sunday school class every week. I don't know if I've ever said that on the podcast, but
No.
I do.
I
I
didn't know that.
teach. I teach a women's Sunday school class every week, and I've taught Bible studies for years and just spoke at our women's conference at our church. And one of the things I always say is, in the moment when you don't know what to do, I always ask myself, in this next moment, all right, I'm confused. What do I do? How can I love God and how can I love people? And if I can just live my life so that in the next moment, how am I going to react here? You know, when you're kind of thrown that curveball, when you're knocked down, how can I love God and love people with my next choice, decision, action, or thought? And that always kind of helps recenter me in what I'm doing and where I'm going. Not how can I get them back? How can I hurt them? How can I make them pay? How can I not help them? I don't even think that way. And so it's just interesting to notice and to see. But with all that said, let me ask you this. How did you get, all right, I know you said, I'm even getting twisted up asking you. You said that you needed more creative outlets than just sofas because, right, we can only get so excited about a sofa, not that they're not exciting. But how did you get into tablescapes and pajamas, which I need those pajamas in my life because
you do need those.
I need those pajamas in my life. But you have, again, I saw you at market. They were all so cute. And oh my gosh, you look so stylish in them. And I love that you love color. You know, I am a color girl. Color excites me. It energizes me. I know some people say color drains them. Your home is extremely colorful. I need color in my life. But how in the world did you shift from sofas to pajamas? Just asking.
Yeah. So because I do all the product development and, the whole color stories and our look and everything else for Taylor Burke Home. And, when I'd go to market, I would meet everybody that was like a neighbor of ours. And I just would roll up into their showroom and be like, hey, I'm Julianne. I'm your neighbor for the next week. And I just met all these wonderful creatives that do the same thing I do. They're running these companies and sell product. And so I just started getting approached by different companies that were like, I really like your aesthetic and it's very different from ours. This is how my relationship started with Lene Jones that owns Mitchell Black. Their aesthetic is very sexy and dark and masculine and just a really
moody,
cool vibe. And they're based in Chicago, and they were like, your aesthetic is so bold and colorful and happy, and it's totally different from ours. And, would you want to come and develop a collection of wallpaper with us and help us launch it in the marketplace? And I'm like, well, yeah. So, it kind of started organically that way.
right?
And it just grew. I mean, it's one of those things where once you do one licensed collection, you kind of start getting into others. It's sort of a snowball effect. And especially for other companies that will see like, oh, so she runs Taylor Burke Home, but she's doing product development for Mitchell Black or for Oliver Gal. That's my artwork collection. They're out of Miami, or, so that's sort of how it happened with Jay's studio that I now have the tabletop and the pajamas with. They saw what I was doing with other companies and, my social presence and what I was able to do in the marketplace. And they were like, hey, we'd love to do a collection with you as well. Now, I think, at the end of the day, like I'm not the greatest gift of product development. I mean, I'm confident in the work that I do, but there's lots of wonderful product developers out there. I think the other component to really good relationships in doing licensed collections is, at the end of the day, you got to be easy to work with. And I think these companies, part of recipe for success is that I try to make it very easy to work with me. I think anyone that runs their own company or is a product developer in the design business, we all have egos. We all do. But I think the most successful relationships, especially when you're licensing, is when you're able to sort of check that ego at the door for the betterment of the product. And so with Jay's, they've just been so great to work with. And that was one of the main reasons they said they wanted to work with me is, over the course of kind of going to dinner and spending time together, they were like, she's good, but she's also a rational human being that's not going to be a diva for us to work with.
Right.
And
right.
so,
And on both sides, don't you think? On both sides.
It is on both sides. And so the partnerships and the relationships I have for that, I mean, those are the most successful ones, I think, when you're both able to come to the table and get your work done and not be all cray about it.
Right.
And, we have contracts and all that stuff. And for me, I always try to make sure I go above and beyond what I've committed to do, but I do my work on time. I get it turned in. They don't have to call me 47 times to get my sketches. That's all part of the equation too. So, that's how I have sort of forayed into licensing. And a lot of that's with tabletop and home decor products that, because I have relationships with some of these national brands, they have retailers here in Charleston. And so I started getting involved in producing these events of like ladies' lunch at my house or a dinner party at a store downtown or other things where I would style a tablescape, work with food company. We'd host an event. We'd hire a photographer. You shoot all the product. There's social media around it. Everybody's happy. Everybody shares the content because it's a real event. It's not let me show you this table that I styled for a fake dinner party where nobody's coming to eat.
Right.
There's a lot of that. And I'm not knocking that. I mean, that's, some people do that for styling, but I think brands like to work with me because I'm always trying to create an out of the box or fun event that is a real, genuine event. It's not some fake thing that we shoot one day.
Right.
And so, it's kind of interesting because I'm not a blogger. I mean, we have a blog on the JT Style website just for people to see all the content and the things that we work on. But, I don't make my living as a blogger. But it's been very strange and fun and interesting to move into sort of the influencer landscape where, just because of the nature of what I do for a living, I get photographed a lot or, have a little TV segment here in Charleston that we do about entertaining at home. And, people start to send you stuff, and it's crazy. I mean, it's awesome, but, the fact that I've been on the other side as a brand working with influencers where we've worked with sponsorships like that, but I'm the brand working with an influencer. We've had some really good ones and we've had some that were not so great, that I always try to go above and beyond in the brands that I work with on the JT Style side. So I know what content they're looking for. I know what social they're looking for, because that's what I would be looking for as a brand.
Right.
So
and it actually gives you an interesting perspective, being able to come at it from both sides.
It does. And so, it's been kind of crazy just to be on that side where, you do understand how social media works and, the promotion of brands and that sort of thing. So it's fun. I mean, it's fun to be a product developer and, the company on one side, but then to also be an influencer and a content creator on the other. It kind of lets me do a little bit of everything.
So what's one of the next big profit goals in your business?
I think long-term for me, the end game is, I could see a company that maybe has an umbrella of companies, design companies under it that, we may spin off Taylor Burke Home at some point, where a company purchases that. And I still am able to do product development for that company or lead the creative direction, but that will then allow me to do lots of product development for JT Style. I'd love to see where that company goes. I don't know. I mean, we'll just see what happens. But for me, I'm going to continue to put processes in place that will allow us to remove overhead. That's always going to be a goal of mine, and to create new revenue streams. And right now, they're all coming from JT Style. Taylor Burke Home, we go to market 4 times a year. We sell our product. That's a pretty easy formula for us. JT Style is where all the opportunities and growth are right now, because we're just getting a lot of calls from companies that are like, hey, I saw that pie baking class you did last week. What else do you have going on that we could be a part of? Or could you help us cook up something fun? And that's where all the opportunities are. So we're just looking at ways to increase our revenue streams with JT Style.
So if an interior designer wanted to, let's say that they've been wanting to do product development, right? Let's come at it from that way. If that's something that they have wanted to do, how would you tell them, or what would you tell them they need to do to get started? We've already said don't give up, be tenacious, persevere, get up if you get knocked down, be a weeble wobble. But where would you tell them to start?
If they wanted to do product development?
Yes.
So, I think I would start probably in the same spot where you would start, Michelle, which is tell me why. Mm-hmm. Because I think that, a lot of people, there's this perception, product development is so fabulous and, oh, it's just so glamorous and, oh, how wonderful. And it is all of those things. But anybody that's licensed their name, ain't nobody making a gazillion dollars off of one collection. Like, you're just not. It is not a game you get into to make a ton of money. And it is a lot of work. Part of the reason I do it is because it's not that difficult, because I'm already in that game with Taylor Burke Home. So yes, there's some upfront work required, but it's not so different than what I currently do. And it supplements all the other things that I'm doing with Julianne Taylor Style. So, for example, the J Studio collection, it's tabletop. Well, that supplements into a lot of the tablescapes, or complements a lot of the tablescapes that I do. So there's there's synergy there. I think that if an interior designer is looking to have a collection of products that is, one to, flex their creative muscles, and it's not going to be a huge distraction away from their business, and it might create opportunities for more exposure for them, I'd say, great. I think those are great reasons to do it. I think if someone started with, well, I've heard it's a great way to make extra income, I'd say, no, that would not be a reason I would recommend to do it, because you look at people out there that have like 8, 10, 12 licensed collections. That's really the route to making money, licensing.
Right. It's almost like writing a book. People think that you're going to make all this money when you write your first book. You actually have to be an author of multiples to even see, the money come in. It's rare that, not saying it can't happen, but it is rare that dipping your toe into the water one time is going to produce what, some people think that it will.
Yeah. And so, I don't want to be like all Debbie Downer and discourage people. I just would start with the why, like, why are you wanting to have a licensed collection of products?
Right.
Because if it's for money, that you'll lose money trying to do that. But if it potentially opens up some opportunities for exposure or links you to other things, then possibly. Yeah.
Or you just have this creative drive burning in you to do it. those are not bad reasons, but you're right. If you're doing it just because you think it's going to be quick, fast money, that's not going to be the way that's going to work out for you.
Well, and really, I've had lots of conversations with people about licensing versus private labeling. And for me, sometimes I think private labeling is actually a better route than licensing, because, you go to a manufacturer that makes candles that under a great, brand name, and you have them make candles for you in the same factory and put your brand name on it. You can then sell that at retail and you get all the margin.
Right.
Versus going to the candle company and saying, would you like to do a licensed collection of my candles? And I make 2-3%. So
good point.
I've had lots of discussions the last year or so about that. And we, because right now it's a hot topic, right? This whole idea around licensing, but it's hard. It is a topic where there's not a lot of information out in the marketplace. Like if you go and try to Google licensing and the ins and outs, there's just not a lot of information. It is one where you got to talk to somebody who's done it. And my first contract looks very different than the one that I just did, because you learn over time, the worth of what you bring to the table evolves over time. Mm-hmm. And what I bring to the table now is much greater than what I brought to the table 2 or 3 years ago in my first collection out of the gate. So, it is a negotiation back and forth, and your first license deal, you're going to be willing to do it for basically nothing, just because you're like, I really want a licensed collection.
Yeah.
And won't this be fun? But then as you move forward, what you bring to the table changes and your confidence grows. And especially if the collections are successful, mm-hmm. then your contracts change.
Right.
So there is, there's an evolution there.
I think what's so important here too is, so again, if you're looking to get into product development, not only the why, but then asking yourself, what are the different income potential or income generating potentials? Like you said, the licensing versus private label, and doing as much research as you can mm-hmm. to see the difference and which one really fits your why and what it is right now. And just because we choose one way to start doesn't mean that's the only way we get to do it. It could be that you do a combination of the two.
Right.
Based on the product. So Julianne, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, the other key to that too is thinking about, what your core strengths are. I had this conversation just last week with somebody that is one of my creative coaching clients, and she's been approached from somebody who wants to do a licensed collection with her. And so we kind of talked through those, and, you have to think through, if somebody's doing that, what is it they bring to the table? Like for me at Taylor Burke Home, we get approached all the time by designers and other people that are like, hey, could I do a little capsule collection with you? And, we'd love to do that. One, we just don't have the time and space to do that. But two, the other reality of that is I'm the product developer for Taylor Burke Home. So not that I think I'm the end all be all of product development, but that's one of our core strengths. I don't need to go out and seek somebody to do product development and do a collection with us, because that's one of our core strengths.
Right.
So
you need to make sure you're lining up properly before you
you want to, like, if you're an interior designer, the company that you approach to work with, you've got to put together a good case story of why they need to have you do a collection with them. If they've got a whole team of product developers and they can easily whip out that design just as fast as you can, you then either need to bring a ton of social media followers or something to the table that they don't have, because that's what they're going to be looking at, is saying, well, I have a whole team of artists here. What would I need from you?
Right. The goal here is for this to be beneficial on both sides. And
yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
It's got to be mutually beneficial.
It's not, hey, I need my name and lights. Will you help me?
Yeah, exactly.
So Julianne, where can people find you? If they want to find out more about Taylor Burke Home and Julianne Taylor Style, where can they go?
So the best place to find out what we're doing is on Instagram. You can go to @Julianne Taylor Style and follow me personally and all my little shenanigans. Or you can go to @Taylor Burke Home and you'll see all the fabulous pieces coming out of our factory or different installs and that sort of thing. And we have websites for both. So if you want to see what's up on our blog, juliannetaylorstyle.com, or other kind of gigs, if you're a creative entrepreneur out there that's into product development, you can certainly contact us if you want to work with me on an hourly basis. And yeah, Taylor Burke Home has a website too, taylorburkehome.com. Those are the best places to find us.
And we'll be able to also find you at High Point Market. Do you do that both times?
Yes. So we'll be there in April. We're going to be at Suites at Market Square. We're moving back over from IHFC to a different building, and we'll be there in April, and then you'll catch us in Atlanta in July.
Excellent. Well, Julianne, thank you so much for taking time to share your journey with us today and talk a little bit about product development and branding and how to get that out there if that's something we're looking at least just to understand it. I really appreciate the time that you spent with us.
Oh, well, I'm just honored that you asked me to be a part of the podcast, Michelle, and I love what you're doing and all the work you're doing with interior designers, and so thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. I will see you at Market.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. Julianne is seriously as kind and forthcoming in person as she is on the podcast. She is so willing to share and help others on their creative journey. My goal is to help you in your financial journey. So hop over to scarletthreadconsulting.com and check out the new Master Your Profit course or Understanding Your Financials course. Both will give you the understanding and then the cash flow to pursue your creative licensing or branding dreams. And remember, profit doesn't happen by accident.